And I mentioned to you the reason I want to go through the book of Joshua is my favorite book in the Old Testament. It's a great book. It's a book actually that I enjoy reading over and over again. So many great godly principles in this book. And it's a story of victory. It's a story of God keeps his promises, and God can deliver you no matter what the situation is. And I just get excited reading it, to be honest. And I hope that you do too. Well, we looked at the first 8 chapters, and we're going to go into chapter 9. And I've just entitled this chapter, it's Israel's Canaanite Covenant and the Gibeonites. This is a very interesting situation with the Gibeonites, and some great lessons to learn because of these people, the Gibeonites. So let me just begin by reading the first 15 verses. I know it's a little long, but let me read this if I may. And as soon as the kings who were beyond the Jordan, in the hill country and the lowland, and all along the coast, in the great sea towards Lebanon, the Hittites, the Amorites, the Canaanites, Perizzites, Hivites, Jebusites, heard of this, they gathered together as one to fight against Joshua and Israel. Now, what had happened, of course, they'd crossed the Jordan, they defeated Jericho. They first of all lost Ai, went back and just tore that place apart. And God had said, don't take any of the goods out of Jericho, but you can take all that you want to take from Ai, and they had. So all of these kings and all of these people living in the land had heard what had happened at Jericho and Ai, so they wanted to gather together an army to come against Israel and try to defeat Israel. Right, verse 3. But when the inhabitants of Gibeon, note that, heard that Joshua had done at Jericho and in Ai, they on their part acted with cunning. And they went and made ready provisions, and they took worn-out sacks and donkeys and wineskins and worn-out, torn, and mended clothes, with worn-out patched sandals on their feet and worn-out clothes on their back. And all the provisions were dry and cumbersome. And they went to Joshua in the camp at Gilgal, and they said to him and to the men of Israel, we have come from a distant country. So now make a covenant with us, if you will. But the men of Israel said to the Hivites, perhaps you live among us. Then how can we make a covenant with you? You see, God had told them, don't intermarry with any of the people that are in the land. These people are godless, and they're going to deceive you, and they're going to cause your people to be deceived and fall away from Jehovah. That's what God. So God said, I want you to go into these cities, destroy everybody in the city, destroy all of their gods, don't make any covenants with them. Whatever you do not intermarry with these people who are enemies of God. Okay, verse 9. And they said to him, we come from a distant country, and we servants have come because of the name of the Lord your God. And we've heard a report of your God, and all that he did in Egypt, and all that he did to the kings of the Amorites who were beyond the Jordan, and to Sihon, the king of Heshbon, and to Og, the king of Bashan, who lived in Ashtaroth. So our elders and all the inhabitants of our country said to us, take provisions in your hand and journey and go and meet these Israelites and say to them, we want to be your servants. Come now, make a covenant with us. Here is our bread. It is still warm, for we took it out of our houses, and our food for the journey on the day which we set out to come to you. But now, behold, it is dry and crumbling and moldy. And these wineskins, they were filled with them. And behold, they're thirsty, and they've burst open, and we've lost the wine. And these garments and sandals of ours are worn out from the very long journey. So the men took some of their provisions, but they did not counsel from the Lord. And Joshua made a covenant with them, and he let them live. And the leaders of the congregation swore that they would be faithful to them. Well, this turned out to be a disaster. These people from Gibeon were Hivites. They were the very people that had been told not to make any covenants with. But you know what they were? They were deceptive. Look at this, verse 14, perhaps the most important verse of all. Look what it says here in verse 14. And it says, so the men took some of the provisions for the Gibeonites, but they did not counsel from the Lord to find what they should do. You know, I told you there's a moral in every chapter of this book. And this is the moral here. You've got to go with God's word, not with good words. You know, people will tell you some great things. These Gibeonites lied, deceived them, and because they didn't go to God, they didn't go to God's word, they just took the good word of these people, formed a covenant, and it became a disaster later because they did intermarry. And the gods of the Hivites, in some cases, became the gods of some of the people of Israel. Well, a good lesson to learn. Don't go with good words, but go with God's word. All right, look forward to seeing you tomorrow night. God bless.